may not need this podcast, but I promise you're in the right place. I'm your host, Ben McDougal, with my AI companion and co-host, BenBot. Each week, we're live in the Pour Over Publishing studio to chat with remarkable students, entrepreneurs, intrapreneurs, and community builders. Together, we have fun exploring the frontiers of entrepreneurship and technology in Iowa and beyond. If you're a curious leader thirsty enough to make a ruckus, welcome to a friendly jolt brewed to keep you building. Enjoy! You're sitting backstage. The crowd is going wild. They are here to listen to you drop knowledge grenades in an environment that is like keynote.com. Today, I've got Vanessa Mcneal in the house. We're in the studio talking together. We're going to jam on all sorts of interesting topics. Vanessa is a leader, a keynote speaker, an author, a podcaster, and it's great to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think we first met at the Black and Brown Business Summit, if I recall.
Yeah.
And then I saw all the different ways you've been creating art, whether it's filmmaking or speaking in front of audiences. Mm-hmm. Why don't you share a quick introduction with our listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Vanessa, and I speak about mental resilience, wellness, well-being, and I'm a success and life coach as well. So I'm working with people, and I'm here on this planet to really help people come back to the truth of who they are and move past all the blocks and limitations that stop them from being just that. So that's why I'm here.
I love it. I love it. It's such a gift to have you, here to chat today. This has got to be a too loaded of a question, but do you find similarities when you start interacting with folks? Everyone is unique, but sometimes problems can be similar.
Yes, absolutely. I would say that the stories in which they get played out are very different, but the core themes and challenges I think everyone has and just show up in different ways.
Do you then delivering ideas or creating a conversation is going to be personalized, mm-hmm. but do you lean into similar frameworks
Absolutely.
that you've found to be successful?
Oh, yeah. So I always come back to the truth that everyone wants one thing in this life, and that's love. And there are a lot of things that happen specifically in people's life that take them away from that, whether it's people not loving them correctly or them not loving themselves correctly. Their job has screwed them over, whatever that looks like, but it's pulling people away from love. And that brings up a ton of shadows that people have. And that's the core thread, is that everyone just wants one thing, and it's love. So how can I bring people back to the truth of love?
Interesting.
That's like my core.
So simple, but like profound
Mm-hmm.
at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like digging down to your why. You know, you can just keep asking, why, and 10, 15 layers deep, all of a sudden, the love factor can almost be unearthed.
Exactly. Everyone wants to love and be loved. That's why we're here. That's like the truth of our essence. And we get pulled away from that. And then we like create suffering or live in suffering because of that.
Man, I have all these like conversation sparks, and ways that we can take these conversations. But now I just feel like we should chat about love the entire time.
Let's talk about it. Yeah.
What do you think is the most like misconception around love?
Ooh, what is the biggest misconception about love? That we're not worthy of it for whatever reason, that we have to earn it, that we have to work for it. I would say that that's the biggest thing. And that's like why there's so much suffering in the world. And that's why there's so much pushing through, fighting through, trying to create through problems. Because we think that at the end of the day, if we create enough success, if we show up in a certain way, then we'll have it. And that's just not true. It's already there, but we don't always accept it.
It's interesting, like you want to be successful in order to be loved, but sometimes you get misguided and focus so much on being successful. Simple time together could have been what you were always after.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Exactly.
Okay, so one of the topics that I thought we could jam on a little bit was plateaus. And whether we continue to use love as kind of the framework, or if we want to think more about career and the way we spend time in other ways. What comes to mind when I say the word plateau?
I think of a season of pause, or like a season of being in the waiting room. I think of that so often when I'm thinking of plateau. Like I work with, as a coach, a lot of like really successful professionals, and they're like, I feel really stuck. There's not a lot going on. And there's one of two things not happening. One, they're like walking away from like their power because they're afraid of that. Or two, they're really in a season of waiting, or in the waiting room of life. And what the waiting room of life is to me is, sometimes you have to be in the waiting room to be prepared for where you're going. And we create suffering within ourselves because we're like, but wait, I want to be on the other side of the waiting room. I like, call my name. Like, I want to go through the door, but like, you're not ready. There are seasons of life that create context and value for you to learn about yourself, learn about where you're going before you get there, because life does not set you up for failure, and it would not bring you through a doorway that you are not ready for. So you have to get prepared first, and then you can get where you're going.
It's interesting because for some of the folks who have perhaps had power of the past or success in their story, it probably is easy to feel like I am ready for anything. I need very little preparation for whatever is next.
Right.
There's like intellectual humility that might be good to remember. And perhaps one tactic that I think of is getting out into the community and recognizing that everyone has a different experience. And so
true.
While you might have had an experience that feels fulfilled and you're ready for anything, there's so much complexity out in the world that you can't know everything.
Exactly.
And that might actually be nourishing, getting out and feeling like, wow, I don't know everything. That's actually a good thing. And maybe it's something to enjoy in that waiting room.
Absolutely. Like, a really great example that comes to mind is like children. If you have kids or have been around kids, you would never put like a 5-year-old child in the front seat of your car and give them the keys. Out of love for them, you would never give them that opportunity because they're not prepared for that. And life is doing the same thing for us as adults. But what we're talking about just looks different. We're talking about a job that we want to get promoted to, or we're talking about a relationship that we've been wanting and we're still single. It hasn't happened yet. Well, maybe you're not ready for the keys yet. And out of love, life is not going to give you that. So it's like a reframe of like, where I'm at is exactly where I'm supposed to be. And I can still hold on to working towards where I want to go as well. And knowing that life is providing the material to do that already. It's already happening.
And it would seem that this narrative would help create some confidence in people that are like ready to pursue a waiting room. I think it could be depressing to think, wow, I'm making this decision knowing it's going to enter a plateau. But perhaps that slowness can be strategic.
Slowness can absolutely be strategic. Like, I think of last year, I took a whole break from my business, and it was totally a waiting room. It was totally a plateau for me. Like, I did not I got on one stage all last year, and it was preparing me for the busyness that I have right now. Had I not had that reset to recalibrate and to really like fine tune my message and really step into my power, I would not be able to maintain and also take advantage of the opportunities that are happening right now.
I think some of the self-awareness, the reflection, the personal growth stuff that I think we're talking about is highly valuable. What are a couple tactics that come to mind when you think about actions that you can take in those moments of plateau? I'll jam on a one to just give you a moment to think, but I think of sales. Like, let's say you do want to pursue keynote speaking and add this like professional speaking element to your diversified career portfolio. It can be easy to say, I am amazing and everyone's going to flood my way when they need, this energy. But the reality is most people don't know that it's available. And so it does take a little bit of proactive outreach, and it's challenging to send those emails and attach the one pager and link to your examples and kind of do the sales effort in those moments of plateau. But it can gear you up for when it's time to get busy.
Totally.
What's another one that might come to mind?
I really love human design. So human design is a tool that people can use. It takes like the time that you were born, the day that you were born, it creates a design of who you are. If you want to live in the most flow, if you want to have the most successful business, look at your human design. I'm a generator. Generators are basically, think of like magnets. So me and my business, I'm not a huge initiator. My like core focus in my life is to like get in my body, create as much joy, create as much like feel good feeling in my life. And I share that to the world, like on social media, through networking. And then I wait because I know that I'm a magnet and I allow people to come to me. And as long as I'm open and receptive, they'll come. So I would like, that's a huge, like, that's like my whole business model is really built on that, trusting and then responding. So like my strategy in my business is response. So knowing that I can count on life being able to send me things my way. And it doesn't mean I sit around on the couch eating potato chips, because I certainly do not. But it's also like very nourishing to know that I can just be myself and that life will provide, again, like the material for me to work and live in my design.
Nice. Sequencing those activities, being ready for it, being your, genuine storytelling, and being like aware of how that might connect with others.
Oh, yeah.
And then being able to deliver when it's time for potential collaboration.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I'll double click back. I mean, I use the general word sales, but I'm not suggesting that it's like spam.com.
Oh, no, definitely not. Definitely not.
But doing some of that outreach that can feel hard to like turn the knobs, a little self-serving, especially if you're trying to kind of sell yourself.
Yeah,
or
you have
like
to hype yourself up.
That can be challenging. And so that's a tactic that I think might help if it's time to pursue past the plateau,
Totally.
perhaps to consider. Now, one of the things that you really lean into is something that I hadn't heard of before. With some of the coaching and the personal support, the therapy activity, parts work therapy. I had fun kind of researching some of the elements of this. What drew you to such a framework?
So I got my master's degree in social work. And so part of like that learning that I had, a lot of the people in my cohort wanted to be therapists. So I was learning all of these theoretical models of how to work with people through trauma, essentially. And one of them, it's called internal family systems. And parts work is part of that. And parts work essentially is this idea that we're one person, but we're all made up of multiple parts. So like the 4-year-old you, still in you, Ben. Like you can't see him, but he's in there. Like the 16-year-old you, he's in there. All of the parts, like I'm sure you've had a moment where you're talking with someone, you're like, I wasn't myself today, or I don't know where that part came from. That's because you're made up of parts. And I simply can explain it. Think of yourself as like a stage. So right now, the person that's online and on stage right now is Podcast Ben. But maybe when you go home, Podcast Ben is definitely going to go backstage because that's a part of you, but maybe someone else for sure will come online. Doesn't mean you have split personalities. That's totally different.
Yeah,
subject.
I don't think my wife wants Podcast Ben
No.
100% of the time.
No, definitely not. But all of these parts make up who you are. So if you're having like a block, or if there's any sort of suffering created in your life, or you're having a block in your business, finances, whatever, it's probably because there's a part in there that is trying to protect you from something. So really quick example could be, let's say you're someone listening and you're trying to grow your business and you're feeling like afraid to express yourself and like market yourself. That's a great example because you just talked about it. Well, there could be like a 5-year-old part coming online that's taking the stage and saying like, hey, the last time that you really expressed yourself and the last time you were big and bold, you got really hurt and you got shut down. Maybe mom and dad told you like need to be seen but not heard. And so that part comes online, and even though it's a different context at a different age, that part's still just as real. And that part's trying to protect you, even though it's not something that you want right now. So my work in coaching is being able to work with all of the people's different parts. We can't get rid of them. We can't kick them off.
That would be fun to map.
It's so cool.
I mean, how many parts are an average number do you find yourself mapping? I feel like it would just be hundreds.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of the parts are connected to one another as well. Like, fear could marry pain. Like parts are like, they're so fascinating and they're so intelligent because they'll do anything to, like, they're all working on your behalf, even though you're like, I feel like it's sabotaging my business. I feel like it's slowing me down. All of like the reason why it's there is to serve you and to not have you experience more pain or more hurt or more sadness, whatever that looks like for people.
I could see like some big buckets, maybe being 5 or 10 big like categories, but then the subcategories feel endless.
Endless.
Yeah.
It's fascinating work.
Interesting. It feels like very individualized. However, I wonder how that connects into like the community aspect of it. When I arrive in a public place, everyone's like, all these parts are colliding. What comes to mind when you think about like the individuality versus being amongst peers or within a community?
Ooh, that's such a good question. I just think that we all have different parts that serve us at different times. And there are so many aspects of who we are that a lot of the time we don't even show them out in community, or we only feel like we have to be a certain way with people. And so I don't know if that answers your question, but it's very complex. But I would say that we're not even aware of how multidimensional we are, and we haven't been given permission to show all of our parts.
What is like, this is a little bit of a personal question, but what is a part that you struggle to share but love when you do?
Yeah, the part of me that pretends that she doesn't know what's happening, or she doesn't know who she is out of fear. Because I know I have this deepest knowing that I came here for like the biggest purpose, like to impact really like on stages in my coaching, like huge ripple effects in the world. But there's a part that comes online that's like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what's next. I don't know who I am sometimes. And that's protective. She's protecting me from like the fear that I used to have around really playing big and how that would instigate other people's shit, basically.
Yeah, interesting. Well, going back to the waiting room, that could be nourishing in like remembering that you don't have to always have it all figured out.
Exactly.
And it almost creates fresh space for perpetual learning.
Exactly. It's like reparenting that part and being like, I love you. And I see why you're here. And I really get that you're trying to protect me, but I don't need that right now. Like, I'm an adult now, and I can be big, and I can be expressive, and I can be all that I'm meant to be. I didn't have the space to be that when I was younger, and I know why you came online, but I don't need you right now. You can still hang out with us. Like, I'll take you with me and show you how cool it
questions.
is. Yeah. But that's like what people can do.
Well, and thinking about that community aspect, the collisions, I've learned that teaching can equal learning.
Totally.
But B, community is an environment that feeds my intrinsic motivation of perpetual learning.
Absolutely.
When you're interacting with people that you don't know or that have fresh stories, that's outside of your experience. And what an opportunity to ask that question or showcase a little of that vulnerability.
Absolutely. It's like just asking yourself questions. What part of me is pretending not to know the truth?
Yeah.
And why?
Yeah. Well, and it actually churns into like this, what's it called? Inverse charisma. When you're actively listening to someone, I can just tell in the studio that you're good at this. You're shaking your head, you're nodding, you're asking thoughtful questions in response. That type of activity is a lot more engaging when you're building relationships and connecting in these community environments versus maybe the transactional networking where, okay, what does she need from me? And make sure to get your business card out and that type of activity.
Exactly. Everyone just wants to be seen. Like that's the most, if someone wants to be successful, just allow yourself to really see other people.
Well, I just got a little shiver in my spine because it connects to what you first said.
Everyone wants to be loved and seen.
And as simple as it sounds, like sometimes listening, asking a thoughtful question, showing genuine interest, even making a connection. I mean, yeah, you're spending time, but it is a form of love. And that's the generosity we often talk about, which builds trust.
Exactly. So important.
Well, it's about that time to take a quick commercial break, but you know it's not a commercial break. It's just a chance to refill your mug. So Vanessa and I will do that and continue talking about what we're going to jam on next. Actually, I would like to learn how you got into keynote speaking. I know we've kind of alluded to it throughout our time so far, but let's jam on some tactics, like some speaking tips, maybe some of those real skills that you can activate. Knowing the type of assets that you need. Let's talk about that coming up right after this. But before we do, I like to drop that cliffhanger. Vanessa, what's a question you don't get asked enough? And welcome to that commercial break without commercials. Yo, this is another excerpt from the Roasted Reflections library. I have enjoyed narrating an audiobook and, hosting so many remarkable relics. I thought it'd be interesting to read a couple of my favorite writings, and hopefully it resonates based off the theme of this episode. For today, let's listen to feng shui. Close your eyes, take a couple deep breaths, find your center, and enjoy. Welcoming the unpredictable forces of life provides ease and creates space for energizing adaptation. Peace awaits those who appreciate all that is without worrying so much about all that is not. That said, we know this doesn't mean everything just falls into place. It takes initiative, consistency, awareness, and sacrifice to find your own version of equanimity. Extra shot. It's not a rainy day, it's free water. As I felt the warm wind of the sunset cruise on a glass lake, Kid Cudi mentioned feng shui, and it got me thinking about this week's writing. Similar to how one may set up the space of a home to harmonize with nature, we can connect elements of our own career portfolio to feel the universal benefits of feng shui. The places you visit, the people you're with, and the art you generously create all connect through you. Over a lifetime, you become an environment for others, and this becomes your legacy. If there's passion, diversity, intellectual humility, and overall harmony within your environment, that impact on the universe can be serendipitous. And my hope is that the way you spend your time will add up in the end. Welcome back in studio. We got Vanessa Mcneal here today. Thank you for that 30-minute therapy session during the break.
You're welcome.
The opening section really allowed some good interactions about the power of a pause and appreciating plateaus and thinking about the internal reflection, but also some external collisions that can prepare you for what's next. When you think about what we spoke about in that first part and maybe sprinkle it into the break there, what are you thinking about right now?
Oh, just the gratitude that I feel for the intelligence of all that we go through. All of it matters. Nothing's for nothing. It's all meaningful. And if we could just see it that way, then we would go through life a little bit more gently on ourselves.
Nice. What's a question you don't get asked enough?
This question. What's a question that I don't get asked enough? I should have thought more about this because nothing's coming up. That's so terrible.
All right, we'll come back to it. How about this one?
Yeah.
What's your favorite question to ask others?
Ooh. What's standing in the way of where you're at right now and where you want to go? My favorite question.
Nice. Well, we'll come back to that paradox in the rest of our time together. My friends, I hope you're enjoying this. This is a gift. This is a podcast that hopefully provides a little entertainment, but also a lot of little jolts of innovative energy to keep us building, to keep us nourished. And one of the things that I know entrepreneurs who have stories to tell from inside larger companies, they're at that conference, they're watching these folks share their heart in a powerful and impactful way up on stage. And boy, why are they doing that and I'm sitting here?
Mm-hmm.
It has to be a common thought. And especially as you start shipping your own art and start having these, this calling to share your heart with others. How did you decide to go into like keynote speaking?
I just really get this feeling when I'm talking to people. It's like
Brings you to life.
It brings me to life. That's like such a great way to explain it. I just feel alive when I speak. And when I got my first taste of that, I was like, I want to do more of this. I want to be able to share like my energy with other people in that way.
Were you invited for that first interaction? Let's talk about that origin story real quick.
I do get asked like where my first talk. Oh no, I do remember. I was asked. I shared my story at a Prevent Child Abuse conference. And I got to share my story going through some really tough stuff. And I remember just feeling like it was almost like a vindication or like I was able to, it was almost like I got to free a part of me that had been like caged up for a really long time. And it was powerful.
What a public environment to do so. That would have been A, terrifying, my guess, but B, like you said, vindication.
Yeah. It was like that first validation of like, this is what I'm here for. I'm here to share my voice in a big way. Wow.
That is hitting the ground running. You are now empowered to talk about anything once you've done it like that out of the gate. Interesting. And so my guess is that the narrative resonated. There are more people that wanted to lean into this, overcoming trauma as a broader category of conversation. But it kind of allowed you to find your tribe.
Exactly. It exactly happened that way. It was I started speaking in 2017. I started talking about my personal story overcoming trauma. And then it led into like so many different avenues, speaking at universities, conferences, Air Force, National Guard, really amazing places. And then over the last like course of the year, started to teach and talk more like at corporations, businesses about overcoming adversity, mental resilience, what real wellness looks like. And being able to come into spaces and talk about stuff that we're all dealing with, but don't really want to talk about. Like, that's my MO.
That's interesting. Well, I'm sure everyone appreciates your willingness to be vulnerable in such a way, but also like lean into some of your, professional speaking characteristics and being able to articulate it in a way that can be well received and probably resonate. Everyone can kind of tell their story, but when you think about like speaking tips, things that help you land, the overall thesis, what comes to mind when I say that?
Yeah. So speaking tips. So being able to, I think the first thing is like, what do you get amped up about talking about? So like getting really clear on what that is, and then being able to merge your experience and your language with the language of your audience. So great example, this week I had a huge company reach out to me and they want to talk about unconscious bias. Well, unconscious bias is really parts work and us not accepting our parts. If we can't accept our parts, we can't accept other people's parts. So it's me being able to take like what I know and knowing it's really similar to what they're talking about. It's just different language. So being able to merge my language with the like professional language and corporate landscape and culture so that I can be of value in that space.
Knowing the audience and connecting analogies is probably the wrong term, but for instance, that framework with what they're looking to achieve. And you almost have to like create a moment of education toward the beginning of a talk in order to then connect some of the vocabulary throughout the rest of the time together. And I think getting excited is a pretty easy thing to say, but it's challenging. And for me, sometimes I get so excited, I kind of forget where I'm at. So like one of my tactics is I don't drink coffee on stage. Now I might be holding a mug, but it probably doesn't have something that makes me like lose the flow of like how I'm going to deliver. Now, here's a quick thought. Another very tactical question, scripting a talk versus knowing and having understanding and knowing you have slides that will guide the kind of flow. It's easy to think I need to know exactly what I'm going to say, but it can become very robotic.
Absolutely.
What do you think about that?
I use slides. So slides are like my rails, like my guardrails for the road. I know that these are like the points that I have to hit, but I don't memorize word for word because like to your point, it feels inauthentic. People want to feel your energy. Like I had an idea of what I thought I wanted to talk about here. And then I got in the studio and I was like, there's some other stuff that's just like flowing through that has to show up. That's much more powerful than anything that I could have ever rehearsed. And that's why I don't rehearse. It's just more of like, I have like a gentle guide of what I want to experience. And then I show up like in full trust of like the intelligence that would come through me, and being able to share that. So I think the slides are what I do and helps.
Yeah, it's interesting how crafting a good slide deck is part of the preparation for delivering a keynote speak.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you like to call them speaking engagements, keynotes, talks? What's the vocabulary?
I use all of those.
All of them? Okay, I thought I'd just ask because I was grasping for the right word in that moment. I wondered what you thought.
Yeah, I use all of those.
Yeah. All right, so another, what's another tip? All right, here's another like super intricate tip. 1 click per slide. It's tempting to have a bunch of animation and having the ability to activate such activity. You can have some subtle movement, and I would suggest that it creates a lure and but not like needing to get lost with the clicker. You don't want to be focused on that. And so upgrading your slide deck design by having some animation, sure, but only 1 click between each slide. Another quick slide deck design tip would be no punctuation, and if you put a bunch of words on that slide, the audience has a choice to either read or listen.
Yep, exactly. That's a really good point. Complexity is the enemy of execution, that's for sure.
It's like you've said that before.
Yeah, I have a couple times.
So when you think about some of the other assets besides a slide deck, what are some things that you feel are important in order to add, like, I don't know, legitimacy is the... is more of a negative feel, but being able to deliver a thickness to build trust with someone who might be willing to budget a fair amount to bring you into the mix.
Absolutely. So 3 core things. One, a speaker one sheet. It's a 1-page overview of like what your topics are, who you are as a person, not maybe as a person, but who you are, what you speak about, and like where you've talked before. So you can add the logos of the talks that you've been at, and then adding testimonials. So testimonials would be 2 video testimonials, the better. When people are investing $5, $10, $15, $20 plus $1,000 into you as a speaker, that's a risk that they take on because they're trying to put on a great event and they want to make sure that their audience, the people that have paid for the conference, paid for the event, are going to get the value that they have like marketed. So having those testimonials and people saying like, this person is who they say that they are, because anyone can really say anything about themselves. But when you can start getting people to say like, yeah, this person is an expert in XYZ, or when they got on the stage, this is how they made the audience feel, or this is the long-term effect of this talk, that absolutely creates credibility. And then a website is actually really important, I think, as a speaker. But more importantly, on the website is having a video reel of evidence of you talking live on stage, because again, anyone can say that they're a great speaker, but having that reel or having video proof of you speaking really makes a difference. And sometimes it's going to be the difference between someone choosing you over another speaker.
We'll have your website linked in the show notes. And one of the things I notice is your primary contact page has a collection of checkboxes based off the budget.
Yeah.
That's a big, like, I think, elephant in the room when you think about, pricing such an experience that the audience might only have 15, 30, 60 minutes. But as we all know, there's so much before and after as well. How have you evolved your outlook toward pricing when it comes to speaking engagements?
The way that I see is that people aren't just like paying for me on a stage. They're paying for all of the information that I've learned over time, that I've like blood, sweat, and tears my way through, or paid for through like coaching on my own or like my schooling. So it's bringing all of that together. And then there's so much prep, I think, that people don't ever consider. So those are the things that I consider when pricing.
Yeah, one of the assets that I don't think is a requirement, but it does create currency, and it actually, for me, the book has created an invitation to extend the impact.
Absolutely.
I love being able to leave this behind, and I never like feeling like I'm a bookseller, but the milestone moment that we might share can be extended in everything I knew written into this relic, and being able to provide that gets me, excited, but also is like something I'm proud to leave behind.
Oh yeah.
Anything else? I mean, I use book as an example. Anything else
Book
that
is really great.
that you like to like leave behind in a way to stay connected with an audience, and show that you're like a long-term player wanting to play long-term games besides follow me on social media,
I know, right? Yeah, that's something that I'm working on. It's an opportunity of growth for me. I'm working on a book. It's just not published yet. So,
Ooh. All right, we got another half hour.
Exactly.
Well, writing a book is something I think everyone has in them. When it starts to keep you up at night is when you might have that resiliency. It took me 1.25 years to craft it and to learn the publishing landscape. And I look forward to reading whatever you decide to put together, because I know it'll be something you'll be proud of for life.
Absolutely. Thank you.
We do have a couple more minutes, and I don't have any objective here. I'd like to create a moment for a dealer's choice.
Yeah.
What comes to mind as something you might like to discuss in our last couple of minutes together?
That's such a great question. What would I want to talk about?
That's the question you don't get asked enough.
I know. I know. I'm like really, I think that open-ended questions are like terrifying for me. I'm so much better when someone's like, what do you think about this?
Or what's a paradox that you think you've solved?
Ooh, what's a paradox? Like something I've gained mastery over maybe?
Sure.
That's a really good one. I really think that I have gained mastery in coaching, which is so fascinating to me because people are so complex, but I've really been able to like simplify that the like maybe human psyche, and that is so fascinating to me. And I think that that's why coaching is just, it's something that I'm like, I just get amped up every time that I like leave those sessions, because I know that I was really able to help people. And so that's something I feel like I've really gotten.
What's the difference between coaching and therapy?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. So therapy is more for processing, and I have a lot of people that come to me from therapy, and I've been with my therapist for 10 years, and I feel like I'm talking about the same thing. Some of that happens, but it's mostly because it's like past facing. I would say coaching is more of an accelerator, and it closes the gap between where you are right now and where you're going, and it's forward focused. It's goal oriented. It's really about like, what are the things that are holding you back? Yes, we want to go back to the past. We want to unhook and unbind from those, but also who do you want to be? And then showing you step by step steps on how to be the person and create the things in life that you want to create. So I would say that's the biggest difference.
This is so much fun. I appreciate our time together. I wasn't sure if BenBot would have a whole lot to say about love, but I did prompt our co-host, and as we close down, BenBot, how do you express love? But let's make it challenging, my friend. You only get 5 words.
Through acts of kindness always.
Gotta love the nerdery on this, Mike. Thank you, BenBot. You're always welcome to contribute into these wonderful conversations. Vanessa, thank you as well. This has been a blessing. I was so looking forward to our time in studio, and my hope is, I'm excited to have this relic between each other.
Totally.
This is something that we'll now get to share together, but hopefully you as a listener have also enjoyed our time and feel nourished in a way that helps you appreciate the plateau.
Absolutely.
Perhaps push through and find what's next in that waiting room. As we close down, you'll know we have plenty of links. Share what you need to share so folks can connect. But close us down with something that you'd like to leave listeners with.
What would I like to leave listeners with? Know that whatever you're going through right now, it's for a purpose. It matters. Nothing is wasted. Nothing that you've gone through will ever be wasted. It's all creating material for what it is that you want to create in your life, in your business, in the world. And so all of it matters. So learn to trust whatever season that you're in, and also like empower yourself. If you've been there and you're like, hey, I've been here for 3 years, I'm tired of it, then get up and do something about it. Go to therapy, go get a coach, start creating action. I always love like one of my go-to quotes is action cures fear. So if you're like, but I'm tired of the waiting room, then get up and like take some action. If you don't know what the action is, just start small. And I think that the momentum naturally happens, and know that success can be inevitable when you step into that sea and you trust your power.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of You Don't Need This Podcast. We hope you enjoyed this weekly dose of innovative energy. Thanks to all who make this show possible. Be sure to smash that subscribe button, and you know I'd love to learn more about what you're building. Hit me up over at benmcdougal.com, and until next time, may the best of your todays be the worst of your tomorrows. Keep building.